Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to Muslimish Detroit 2019 conference. We value your attendance and your participation and your support. The next section of the conference is titled Islam and Science on Evolution, one of the most important theories in science, and one that had the most influence. Oh, this became really a background music. Yeah, we'll put down the music in a second. I like to speak over jazz. Yeah. Islam and Science. Our next speaker is Mr. Radwan Dabaja, bachelor's degree in science biology, and he's a certified analyst in geographic information system. Mr. Radwan Dabaja is a fan of the theory of evolution, and he has his own Islamic take on it. He tries to understand the theory of evolution through Islam. The abstract of his talk is evolution has long been misunderstood by religious scholars, and as a result, they misinterpreted the Holy Quran based on this misunderstanding. However, there are many verses that provide evidence of evolution throughout the Holy Quran. This statement will be explained now by Mr. Radwan Dabaja without further ado.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, allow me to thank the organizers of this event, as well as the Arab American National Museum for hosting this event. My talk today is about evolution and how it's perceived or misperceived by interpreters of the Holy Quran, as well as other Islamic scholars, and what caused that. Beginning interpretation of the Holy Quran did not start until the 2nd century in Islam, when some of the interpreters found it necessary to interpret the Quran, so not everyone interpreted it on his own the way they understand it. At that time, Muslims were hungry for stories of the prophets, story of the old, story of the earth. And they had some of it, but most of it came from the Holy Bible. And what's known as the Israeliyat, which is the stories that came along with the Jews about the Holy Prophets, came into Islam during the 1st and 2nd century, and kind of governed the way Muslim scholars think at that time. Most of those stories are not supported by Islam. Most of it is considered false, unacceptable by the Holy Quran. It goes against the belief. Some of it is just fine. You cannot reject it or accept it. It's just a story that does not contradict the Holy Quran. But a lot of it did contradict with the Holy Quran. Among those stories is, of course, the creation of Prophet Adam and the story, where did he come from heaven down to earth, or how was he created? And so this kind of thought governed the early interpreters of the Holy Quran. Later on, and nowadays, in the 19th and 18th century, Muslim scholars knew that those Israelites that governed the interpretation of the Holy Quran, they knew that it shouldn't have been like that. But it's still, even with their understanding of the Holy Quran, the same problem still exists with those stories being within their interpretation of the Holy Quran. But that was not the only thing that twisted their understanding or their thinking of the interpretation. In the 17th and 18th century, doing it wrong?
Those arrows, as soon as the light.
Yeah. During the 16th and 17th and 18th century Europe, there were many authors that spoke about evolution prior to scientific evolution, prior to Charles Darwin. They considered evolution at that time as a human being many species, not just one. 5 species, 10 species, different authors considered human as being completely separate, non-related species. This kind of thought gave rise to colonialism as well as slavery at that time. People were abused in different countries based on this due to white supremacy that had that school of thought. In Islam, this of course goes against Islam, because in Islam humans are equal like the teeth of the comb. It doesn't matter what color you are, what status you are, what race you are, they're all equal. So evolution at that time thought to be this kind of thinking. That was prior to Charles Darwin. When Charles Darwin came in, Charles Darwin, as well as Alfred Wallace, the co-author of On the Origin of Species, when they came in, the church in Europe had already had their mind set on evolution. They are against evolution. They are against Earth being old. Earth is 6,000 years old in their view. Adam was created from clay, and from clay to human. So anything that Darwin came up with, they were completely against for many reasons, mainly because this goes against the teaching of the Holy Bible. But that was not the only thing that they were against. The church was, according to William Draper, in his book, The Conflict Between Religion and Science, he claims that the church in Europe accused Charles Darwin of bringing the Mohammedanian theory of life to Europe. This theory was taught in European colleges as being the Mohammedanian theory. Why? Because many scholars in Islam in the 2nd and 3rd and 4th century, all the way to the 7th century Islam, which is between the 750, 800 up until 1200 AD, we're talking about the theory of evolution. This was common knowledge. The last one was Ibn Khaldun, of course. Ibn Khaldun had copied what others had wrote, but the most prominent ones are Al-Fawz al-Azhar, Ibn Maskouy, in his book Al-Fawz al-Azhar. He explains evolution similar to Darwinism. All animals evolved from each other all the way to human. Human evolved from monkeys, according to his writing. Before that, Ikhwan al-Safa, Brethren of Purity, in their letters, they had 50 letters. In their letters, they also described the evolution the way Charles Darwin explained it. Now, mind you, this all evolution before scientific proof of evolution. This is all not theory, it's more of a hypothesis. But it was common teaching at that time. This is what's called the Mohammedanian theory of life in Europe. The Brothers of Purity did not come up with anything new. What they did is they just documented what people knew at that time. This was a common knowledge. The theory of evolution was common knowledge among people, but not the interpreters of the Holy Quran. Before the Ikhwan Safa, Al-Jahiz is known to be the father of natural selection. He explained the mechanism of evolution, how species have the power of changing from one into another, evolving from one into another. However, the oldest writs or the oldest documents I came across about the theory of evolution in Islam came from Imam Ja'far Sadiq in the book of Al-Tawheed for one of his students, Al-Mufaddal bin Umar. This person was annoyed by atheists who did not believe in God, who claimed that nature creates everything the way it is, and they claimed everything to nature, not to God. And he was very annoyed by their argument, so he came to Imam Sadiq to learn about creation, and Imam Sadiq gave him like it's a 60-page lesson over a few days, taught him what creation is like. And in his book, or in his writing, and his teaching to his students, he goes, as he explaining about the creation of monkey and how similar it is to human, and face and body parts and visceral and everything. At the end he says, to know that for a man to know that it's from the same clay, that the man is from the same clay of beast and same origin. To say it's the same clay and the same origin, that means we evolved from the same process, or the same clay, or we came from the same origin, us and the monkeys. These are the oldest traits. This is one of the reasons why the church in Europe stood against Darwin, but that was not the main reason. The main reason is that atheists took that theory of evolution and used it as a proof that there is no God and that there's a Bible is wrong. But as a result of the misinterpretation of the Holy Quran, as a result of the Israelite stories that went into Islam in the 2nd century and first and 2nd century, the interpreters of the Holy Quran had to explain or interpret the verses in a shallow way, similar to fit kind of the biblical story, if I put it this way. This is one of the common verses that they use to prove that evolution did not exist. So that's one of the verses from the Holy Quran. I'm going to read it. And when your Lord said that to the angel, I'm going to create man, Adam, from sounding clay of altered black, smooth mud. So when I fashioned him completely and breathed into him the soul which I created for him, then fall down, prostrating yourself unto him. So what they claim that is what you read is what it is. It's just from clay, fashioned or molded into a human shape, and then when God breathed in his soul in him, he became a man. And this is kind of very biblical. But if you are to accept this, that means you have to explain other verses that are similar, that talks about other creatures, other people, in the same fashion. Why are you interpreting the verses in other places in the Holy Quran anywhere different than this one? And so here, this verse talks about creating all human from clay. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَكُم مِّن تُرَابٍ ثُمَّ أَنْتُمْ تَنْتَشِرُونَ. I put many different translations because there are so many translations of the Holy Quran and they are all different. So and of his science he created you from dust. It doesn't say dust here, it says dirt. Turab is dirt. Then suddenly you were human dispersing. So he's talking about us human. If he's talking about us human being created from dirt, but we all know that we have fathers and mothers, all of us, with no exception. Why did you isolated Adam from in the other verse? Why couldn't Adam have mom and dad, for example? This is a similar verse. And here another verse, which is also they use in the same fashion. The likeness of Jesus with Allah is as the likeness of Adam. He created him from dirt and then said unto him, be, and he is. If you look at this verse closely, also they use that verse as a proof that evolution does not exist. But if you look closely at this verse is not talking about Prophet Adam at all. It's talking about Jesus. Think of it like in a way, let's say I'm saying, I created Ali. The example of Ali for me is like the example of Aristotle. I created him from dirt and told him to be. Here I'm talking about Ali, I'm not talking about Aristotle. Same thing here, God is talking about Jesus, is not talking about Adam. He's saying that he created Jesus from dirt and told him to be. But we all know that Jesus had mother. So how does that explain Adam being created different than Jesus, or different than any one of us? Does not explain it. They cannot explain that. It's just they have to explain this before they can prove that it's from clay directly to human, which is not possible unless we prove that we did not come from mom and dad. Another verse that they used to prove that evolution did not exist, that God sent a viceroy, or in different translation, a ruler to earth, or in different translation it says successor to earth. God is going to send a successor to earth. If we accept that God means that Adam is going to come from somewhere in heaven and the skies to earth, and he's a ruler or successor or wherever it is, if it's understood in this literal way, then there are other verses that we have to explain that are similar to that. For example, he talked about King David, Prophet David. He said to David that we created you as a viceroy or as a successor on earth. If we are to accept that David came in from father and mother, then we have to accept it for Adam also. We cannot exclude Adam from this. And another verse they used to prove that Adam came from heaven down to earth is one says, he said, go down from hence, one of you is full unto the other, there will be for you on earth a habitation and provision for a while. So what did God mean when he said go down from hence? Here's another translation that go down from this status. Status may be the better translation or better interpretation of the verse. It's not go down from a some place to another place. It's the status that he was in, and the status or the state that he's in. In God's eye, we're all different. We're not at the same state. We're not at the same level. We are different levels based on three things. It's not on class, it's not on money, it's not on race, on anything. We are in the eyes of God three states. The believer, how much of a believer you are, how much contributor you are, and how much knowledge you have. Those are the states that makes you different than others in the eyes of God. From what you can see here, for all there will be ranks from what they did. You do a good deed, you do good contribution, then you're a better human. You're at a higher level, a higher state. If we look at the third one, Allah will exalt those who believe among you and those who have knowledge. Knowledge is another way that a human can be at a higher state. So go down from it, it's not going down from somewhere in the sky down to earth, it's just going down from the state that he belonged to at that time. So now this is a sample of the verses that interpreters use to prove there is no evolution. Now, does the Quran talk about evolution at all? It depends how you understand the Holy Quran at the end. So I had a story with this verse in particular. I used to read the Quran all the time. I still do read the Quran all the time, and I don't know how many times I read the whole Quran. I probably lost count 20 years ago, if not more. But one time I'm driving in the car and I come across this verse, وربك الغني ذو الرحمة إن يشاء يذهبكم ويستخلف من بعدكم ما يشاء كما أنشأكم من ذرية قوم